Today's teardown is assisted by Auto Porter from Will's Brewing in Montreal, Quebec. This beer is named in honor of their pointer dog. They describe it as having notes of chocolate and caramel with a pleasant finish. That is very nice. So today I am taking a little bit closer look at this fraudulent portable solid state drive that I got in the last mailbag. It claimed to be a 4 terabyte drive and it was super cheap. So like I said in the mailbag, I was 99% sure this was going to be junk, and it turned out that it was. Of course, the first clue that this was going to be a fake was a 4 terabyte drive for $20 Canadian. There's just no way that was going to be true. The second clue, when I click on my purchase link, it goes nowhere because they've deleted the page and have disappeared into the ether. Of course, when I plugged it into my computer, it did present itself as a 4.2 terabyte hard drive with two partitions on it. One that is 17-ish megabytes, and I formatted that partition, and it did format. I just formatted it as a plain old FAT. The second partition, however, when I tried to format it, no matter which type of file format I put onto it, it failed. No surprise. But that first partition actually did sort of work. If I mount it up, it will mount, and I was able to put files onto it, and those files actually do exist. So it is actually sort of a solid state drive, but it's only a 16 meg drive. And when I take it apart, I'm going to assume that I'll find a 16 meg flash chip inside it and nothing else. But just to further confirm, I've found this neat tool called F3, or Fight Flash Fraud. I think it's available for other platforms, but I know it's available for Linux, and I've installed the GUI version of it. So when I try and probe it to give it a test, and give it my password, which you can't see, it comes back failed. It comes back showing that this is a damaged device. This tool can't even write any, or can't even see any bytes of capacity on it at all. It announces itself as a 3.81 terabyte, that number of blocks, which, if you do the math, probably works out. But there's actually nothing that it can find in there. So, yeah. If you're interested in the F3 tool, I will put a link to it down below. It looks like it's a good thing for diagnosing this kind of problems. And I think I'm going to keep it around for a while because I'm sure I will need it in the future. Anyway, that tells us everything that we already knew. Let's get into this thing and see what we can find on it. Like I said, I'm going to guess that there is just a 16 meg flash chip. And of course, being a slick, modern looking device, there is no obvious way in. So we'll try and pry this back piece off here, which came out surprisingly well. There we go. What do we got? That is a micro SD card hot glued into a holder with one chip, a smattering of resistors and capacitors, the LED there, and a USB-C connector. The control chip is made by a company called Chips Bank, CBM 2199S, or possibly EKW 877J. Let me go do some Googleizing. I couldn't find very much about this. The first thing that I found, though, is when they're in stock, you can buy them from LCSC for 40 cents each. They are a memory controller. It's a QFN32 package, which we could see that, and we guessed that it was a memory controller. And other than some funky Chinese websites, this is probably the best information I could find. Here it is here in situ. It's got a NAND flash chip. Most of its pins are talking to that NAND flash chip. There's a DP and a DM, which go through a series resistor out to a USB connection. 3.3 volts, so presumably there's some sort of regulation on the little board that we've got to knock the 5 volts from the USB down. Other than that, there it is. Again, not too much to see here. Let's try and disassemble it further. I'll put some isopropyl on there, which usually breaks the bond of hot melt glue fairly quickly and fairly effectively. I don't know who I found that trick out from, some maker YouTuber, but it is surprisingly effective. Just pop that guy up out of there. Yeah, there's nothing else in the back of that circuit board. Let's see if we can get that little SD card out of there and see what it really is. Like I said earlier, I'm going to guess that it's just like a 16 megabyte micro SD. Is that as far as that wants to go in there? Is there any other goop on there? No. Okay, we'll put that into that reader and plug that in there and see if the computer wants to read that. It shows up as a 54 gig drive. That's hilarious. Let's see what F3 has to say about it. Oh, it's not failing immediately. Okay. Well, I will come back to you when this test finishes, somewhere between a few seconds and up to 15 minutes. So while I'm waiting, I will just enjoy this, and we'll come back to you in just a moment here. Okay, time has passed, and I am shocked and surprised. That card identifies itself as a 64 gig and announces itself as a 50.95 gig, and apparently it is functional. Wow. It is a real thing according to that. I did not expect that. So, let's try and format it. Let's see what'll happen. This could take a bit of time. Will it mount? It mounted. How big is it? Okay, I completely did not expect this to work. Let me drop some files onto it. It's probably not going to be fast because it's only on a USB 1 connection. But, oh, wow. Let's copy a couple of Linux ISOs and this Windows VM image onto it and see what happens. It is going to take a while, though, because we're transferring 17 gig at 7 megabytes per second. Like I said, it's still happening. It's just not happening very fast. So while that's busy copying, I thought I'd take a little bit closer look at this guy. And most of these pins down here, 7 of them, or 6 of them, I guess, go over to here. The ground goes just to a ground plane. This pin here goes out to this capacitor, which goes to the LED. Now, normally I would have thought that that was a signal or something, but I think that's just the power pin, because it also has a connection up to the power pin on the chip, and one side of this 2.2 ohm resistor. The other side of that resistor goes to the 5 volts in, so that is really the only power regulation. There's no other regulation on the board, weirdly. I think what's actually happening is that resistor is dropping, providing a little bit of current resistance. Power's going to there, and it's also going to this capacitor, which is the other side of it's on ground. I think this LED is actually being used to clamp the voltage. I can't see any other way that we're getting 3.3 volts, and I am measuring 3.3 volts, there and here on this chip, or on the SD card, which sort of goes along with the cheesiness of this device, if that's actually what's happening. But I don't see any other way for it to be getting its 3 volts out of that 5 volt source. Low part count, cheap, 40-cent chip there. That socket is probably 5 cents, and another 50 cents worth of components. That connector and the circuit board itself are probably the most expensive things here. Well, maybe that aluminum piece there. Anyway, still waiting around for those copies to happen. They're not happening fast, but they aren't failing. They're still happening, so we'll come back in a minute or 6 or whatever it takes. Okay, after way too long, it's done. So now I'm going to just do a quick hash check on one or more of those files and compare them between the original and the copy and make sure that they actually copied correctly. And this also took quite some time. So there is the hash of the original file on my hard drive, and there is the hash of the copy. And to my eye, those look identical. Well, that's cool. We'll just check the properties of the original and the copy, and of a different one of the files, exactly the same byte size. Okay, that looks like that actually worked. I did not expect this to be a legitimate SSD card, or SD card rather. And yes, it is incredibly slow. That could be the USB to SD card adapter that I was using. It could be because it's on a USB 1 connection. It could just be because that card is incredibly slow. I'm not sure if I have a way to characterize the speed of it given the jankiness of my overall connection here, but maybe I'll try it in the camera or something in the future. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to trust this thing for long-term storage, but I might use it to move files between my 3D printer and my computer or something like that. Something, low risk. So anyway, that surprised me. Just a little generic micro SD card in a mediocre holder. Well, now you know the rest of the story, I guess. I still don't recommend buying these, even though you can't buy this one anymore because the seller has disappeared it. But at least I don't feel quite so bad. I got a second video out of this thing, and as I said, maybe I can use that to move files to my 3D printers, at least until it completely fails. I don't know how rugged it's going to be. Time will tell, I guess. Well, thanks for watching. Questions and comments down below. I'll have a link to some of the tools that I use down below too, just for completeness, I guess, if you want to check up on your cheap, low-budget SSDs or removable drives, just in case you've got some kicking around, I guess. Well, yeah, thanks for watching. Talk to you later.